I grew up in Dubai, but I used to visit Pakistan every other year when I was a kid. It's been about 10 years since I last visited the country. My mother's from a place called Sheikhpura, right outside of Lahore in Punjab, and my dad comes from Nowshera, which is about an hour away from Peshawar in the northwest frontier province of Pakistan. So every time I visit Pakistan, I get to travel a lot, and I see two very different sides of the country through these two provinces. I started my trip with a 3 hour journey into Northwest Frontier Province, which is now known as Khyber-Pakhtunkhwa. And one of the first things you notice as you travel along the highway in Pakistan is its landscape and just how beautiful it is. You rarely get to see this side of the country on news channels, which is a shame considering it's what makes up most of the country. Khyber-Pakhtunkhwa definitely seemed to be the most troubled region of Pakistan. Nowshera and its surrounding areas were the ones that were severely hit by the floods, and everywhere you look, you can see some sort of damage that the floods have left behind. I mean, there were collapsed bridges, you could see watermarks on walls that showed how high the flood went, and then there were these houses that were completely obliterated, like someone dropped a bomb on them. They're nothing but a pile of rubble now. I mean, the only thing that was left standing on some of them, as you can see, were the archways to the main entrance. Everything else had just completely gone. I only got to see the place after the water had finally receded. Our driver told us that some of the roads that we were driving on were completely engulfed by water. Fortunately, people have gotten a lot of help, whether it's by the army or by other means. And you can see them there. They're trying their best. They're trying to rebuild their lives.
The right side पे जो है ना आपके नौशहरा कलां आता है, नौशहरा सिटी जो है ये तो सारा डूबा हुआ है। आप अगर लेफ्ट साइड पे देखें आपको सही पता चलेगा। यहाँ पे अंदर की साइड पे दीवारें गिरी हुई होंगी, बड़ी बुरी हाल है।
Something else that surprised me was how a lot of people always smiled when they saw me with my camera. As a street photographer, I can tell you that's not something you see very often. In my experience, when people see a camera, they always assume the worst, almost never want their picture taken. But I never really had any problems here. My father does a lot of social work in Pakistan, and at the moment he's trying to build a vocational university in the area. So we met with some of the people helping him out in what's called a hujra, which is basically a sort of meeting point or common area of a house that people use to entertain guests and sit down and talk with them. And clearly what got my attention in this hujra was this really massive tree in the lawn. It was around lunchtime while I was in Angkor Khatak, and a lot of the schools were done for the day. So I got to see all these kids walking back home. Some of them were clearly very receptive to having their picture taken. But it was just nice to see them so happy, and especially to see that even in a relatively remote area such as this, education was something that was important to both girls and boys. The weather was pretty cold in March, and while we were there in Angkor Khatak, we started to see these almost pitch black clouds forming above us. So we started heading home immediately, and in about 15 to 20 minutes we were caught in this hailstorm that covered everything in white. I think my father's definitely on the right track with the vocational university. This place needs it more than anything else. A lot of the industry, like this locomotive factory, is closed down. People are poor. They don't have a lot of options, and education is not cheap. And not everyone can become a doctor or an engineer, especially those who are too old to go back to school. They need some way to get a job and support their families. Unfortunately, until that happens, people have few options, and resorting to crime is going to be one of them. And as some people told me while I was there, that's something that's on the rise in the region. And they also told me that kidnapping people and holding them for ransom is becoming the new popular way to make money. Going to Islamabad after having visited Khyber-Pakhtunkhwa was like stepping into an alternate universe. It's a well-organized city. It's got clean roads, better infrastructure. It's nestled on this plateau. In the background, there are these beautiful and green mountains. You got monuments everywhere you look. The city barely has any power outages, no water problems. You can barely see any signs of poverty. Great places to shop, hang out. It's no wonder it's the capital. This one place I went to in the mountains was Munal. Great restaurants, shisha, beautiful view, great place to sit and relax. And that to me epitomized the city. Well-to-do people enjoying life on top of this mountain, away from the city, away from reality and all its complications. That's how it struck me. It seemed like a great retreat. And to me, that's part of the problem with the city. There seems to be a disconnect here with what the rest of the country is experiencing, the problems the rest of the country has. And they've gone to great lengths to achieve this disconnect too. I mean, the amount of security personnel that they have all over the city, with all the checkposts that carefully allow a certain type of people in, the enormous barriers that surround houses and embassies. It's ironic because it almost seems like you're in a very troubled city, when in fact the real problems are far away. They're outside. And you don't have to go very far either. About 15 minutes away from Islamabad is Rawalpindi. There the roads are like everywhere else. You've got rolling blackouts as well. You've got poverty in all shapes and sizes. But even in Pindi you can see a similar trend catching on, with people preferring to live in gated communities. Aside from all the beautiful historical buildings from the Mughal era, what interested me in Lahore was the commercialism. But now I'd gotten used to the security checkpoints and the rolling blackouts and the beat-up infrastructure. So compared to what I'd seen, it was the commercialism that struck me, that really got my attention in Lahore. I mean, billboards, ads, posters, they were everywhere, on the back of rickshaws and electricity poles and even on minarets. You saw someone saying something, whether it was political or commercial. Unfortunately, I couldn't spend too much time in the city, so with what little time I had, I decided to visit as many historical buildings as I could. However cliched it was, these were sites that were visited by everyone. They were open to the public. People from all classes, religions, and social backgrounds came to visit them. Foreigners from Europe and America, people from outside the city, people on their honeymoons, best friends. It was just nice to be in one place and see all these different types of Pakistanis having a good time and enjoying one place. One of the last places I visited in Pakistan was Sheikhpura. It's where my mother's from and where I used to spend a lot of my summers as a kid with my grandparents. My grandparents passed away, and this was the first time I visited their grave since their death. My grandfather, I should mention, was a very spiritual and religious man, and very well respected, not just in his community, but among many other people across the entire province. You know, one of the things I've heard people say repeatedly about Pakistan is that it's a failed state. I don't think it is, and I don't think it ever will be. There seems to be a strong bond that kind of unites everyone together. People are very different across every region, especially the two provinces that I visited. And there's just a strong bond that kind of holds everyone together, which is not great news in my opinion, because there are a lot of problems with Pakistan, and people need to do a lot over there to get out of that situation. So it kind of seems like this country is on the edge, on the brink, and it's become comfortable over there. And the question is, how long can you stay like that?